And right now we're going to move into another presentation. This is Honor Gunday, the CEO of Paymentwall, and he's going to be telling us a little bit more about the anatomy of a conversion.
Thank you. What I wanted to do was I wanted to ask everyone in the room to lift your hand up if you are a game developer. Okay, and how many of the people develop games in the mobile space? Okay, so it's a lot of people in the mobile space. That's great. Okay, cool. So what I wanted to do was typically payment companies talk about how you can make more money, this and that, and so on. But as a payment provider, I realized that it's not the payments that matter only. You have to start from the beginning, and then you have to be successful at the different stages of a conversion, the funnel. So you have to start with the discovery, the evaluation, and then the negotiation, which I call it, and then finally the payment. So as a payment provider, we typically look at the whole funnel, and we want to make sure that people are coming in with the right expectation. And we're, as game developers, you're manipulating their expectations. And then finally, you're convincing them to buy your products. We often hear about the discovery problem. So that's the first phase. People have to first discover your application. If you have no traffic, you're going to have no users. Then after that, you go into the evaluation. The user goes into the evaluation phase. They check out your application, and they want to see if there's some meaning, there's some connection between the application and themselves. And if they see that there's a connection, then they will slowly think about maybe buying your application. So most of the time we see game companies evaluate the users based on like just numbers and so on. But you need to really think about their feelings. Because if you don't really think about who came there and what their feelings were, it's going to be really difficult to convince them to buy. So one other thing you need to do is you need to make sure that the users don't have to think throughout each of these phases, and they just basically buy into your product with some simple clicks. And if you look at companies that have been successful at doing that, you can see, for example, Apple. Apple created a branding that really convinces you to buy something. You go into an Apple store, you touch and feel their products, you see the Apple logo on it, you're like in love with the product, and you just want to buy it. You don't have the same kind of experience in other manufacturers. You go to a Sony outlet, you're like, maybe the design is not right, or so on. So there's some consistency that Apple has created with its branding that convinces you to buy. Another interesting one is in the United States, if you go to Las Vegas, the casinos have done a really good job in creating these experiences that kind of push you through the different rooms, the garage. You come in, you park your car, and then you go into the casino floor, and then you get lost and you start spending money. You start playing these slot machines, or you start gambling, you start doing different kinds of stuff, and you don't even think about what you're doing when you're doing that. So they create a really good experience from an emotional standpoint, and also from an experience standpoint, and you buy in without even noticing that you're buying in. So these are the experiences that we need to create as an ecosystem, so that people buy things without even noticing that they're buying them. So the whole idea of the first point is that you want to make sure that users don't have to think too much. Okay. The second thing is, let's move here. You have to think about the different users, as I said. So if you have a female user, a male user, a person from a different cultural background, you're going to have different expectations, different things that make them behave. Let me just move on to the next slide, actually. So these are the main points. So age, sex, location, culture, income. So ASL and CI. So as we mature, as we get older, our preferences change. A male mind differs from a female mind in their emotional chemistry and so on. And then the location where you're from and so on also matters. So if you're from, let's say, Asia versus the United States, you're going to be more likely to not spend too much money because Asians typically save money, they don't spend it. If you look at the national statistics, people tend to save more than spend more. So you have to find ways to convince people to spend more money with you in different ways. And then finally the income. Well, obviously, if you're appealing to a low-income crowd, it's going to be really difficult for you to sell things that are going to be expensive. So it's important for you to adjust the prices and accommodate the low-income users. In the evaluation phase, let's go in detail for the male mind versus the female mind. So this is based on some theory that the male mind evaluates a purchasing decision a little differently from the female mind. So the male mind thinks about their need. Do I have a need for this product? And then they look at the price. Is the price logically priced according to the need that I have? And then they look at the opportunity cost. If I buy this, what else can I not buy? And then they also have, of course, as a secondary trait, it's the like, the priority, and the competitions. Like, what else is out there? I want to know that I'm getting the best product. So if you watch people at Best Buy or so in the United States, try to make, if you watch them buy like a plasma TV or LED screen or something, they'll always ask, is this the best one? Is this the biggest one? Is this the one with the highest resolution, and so on? So the male mind is always comparing and making sure that they're trying to, they're going to get the best bang for the buck. Whereas in the female mind, it's a little different. It's more emotional. The female mind looks at the product and wants to fall in love with the product before they actually buy something. So you have the price still that takes an important part of the decision-making process, the needs and the like, but then the addiction, like, oh, this gives me satisfaction. I'm going to get this more and more. I mean, I like it. It's going to give me some pleasure. So if you look at, for example, Godiva does a really good job appealing to the female mind. How do they do that? Well, you go into the shopping malls. You have these Godiva stores. People browse around, and then they say, oh, this is expensive, that's expensive. I can't afford these diamond rings and so on. But they go into the Godiva store, and they end up spending $3 for a piece of chocolate, and they're satisfied. So again, the emotional value kind of takes precedence with the female mind. So I'm gonna start talking about different ways that you can attract people and convince them to buy different things. So one is luxury. You can in your game or in your application, you can use luxury as a way to sell the game or the application, or you can create luxurious items inside the game, and using that you can get people attracted to the items and get them to buy the stuff. So Louis Vuitton has done a really great job with that. They basically sell these purses in the real world that actually cost maybe $100 to make, but they're charging $3,000, $2,000, and people just buy these immediately without even thinking about it. So if you can create the same kind of experience inside the game, you can sell more items at a higher price. And for you, since it's digital purchases, it's not going to have any cost. The second one is the souvenir factor. So if you look at the airports, you have all these packages of products being sold because people usually have this behavior of buying something as a gift before they leave a city. So if you can create these impulse buys that are going to be appealing to their mind, you can get them to buy things that are just like that purchased. La Durée is a French macaroon company. And at the airport in Paris, they sell these La Durée macaroons at 40 euros a box. And as you depart from the airport, you grab one because macaroons remind you of Paris, and you want to take that home with you. So if you can do the same thing inside a game, you give them a virtual item or virtual good that's memorable, that reminds them of that winning experience, or that reminds them of some experience that they had in real life or something that could convince people to buy something. Specialty sales. So specialty sales is, let's say you go to Best Buy. At Best Buy, they have all these flash sales going on. So they tell you, oh, this is a limited time offer. It's a Labor Day weekend. Now you should buy a new TV. Or it's the Super Bowl, and you have to watch the Super Bowl on a large screen TV, so you have to get your new TV now. They create this sense of urgency with some specialty items that really appeal to a need. So that's the other one. This is a well-known example. At Walmart, I don't know if you heard about this. Who has heard about this? They put the diapers next to the Budweiser, or Budweiser next to the diapers, because they found out based on their research that when guys go shopping for diapers, they also grab a six-pack of beer or something like that. So what you can do is you can bundle different items together and you can cross-sell them. Oh, you were trying to top up your credits. While doing so, why don't you also buy some other thing that's kind of related that you would buy? So you can research inside your game based on your stats what items are purchased by your users simultaneously or by the same user, and then you can create some packages like that. So basically, a purchasing decision is a chemical reaction, and most people don't really think about it. It basically ignites in your brain and says, hey, I'm now buying this. I've made that decision. That decision does something in your brain, and finally you make the purchase. Now, when a person is ready to convert, you have to also do a good job with that process. You want to make sure that the experience of taking the money is as smooth as possible. Now, many companies, of course, have created frictionless ways of taking payments. So if you look at like iTunes, you add your credit card, and then you can basically take payments really easily. It's a good way for people who have credit cards to pay. If you look at a Google Play, they're also trying to do the same thing. And then if you look at retail shops, like the physical world, again, you will see that when you're inside the store, when it's time to take a payment from you, the sales associates usually politely ask you, what form of payment would you like to use? Or how would you like to pay for that today? And that's the smooth transition from the previous stage to the conversion. So it's good to think about how to make that process smooth for the user when they're about to pay. So in the real world, you have cash transactions, you have credit card transactions, wire transfers, checks as the forms of payment. But in the virtual world, things have changed, and the diversity of payment options have increased. So you have still the same options as before from the real world, but now we also have mobile payments, e-wallets, kiosk payments in Russia and so on, and then prepaid cards. So most game developers usually focus on only the platform that they're publishing on. So let's say they're using iTunes or the App Store to sell their games, then they only focus on credit card payments. But they should think about, we believe as Paymentwall, they should think about more options as they try to make that process of collecting the payment smooth. So what are the other important things, secondary factors? So the diversity of payment options is one. The second thing that's important is this list of things I have here. So the load time of the payment page. You want to make sure that that payment page doesn't take too long to load. You don't want to have multiple steps for people to get to the payment page because you've already convinced them. You already spent so much time convincing the users emotionally to get them to that purchasing decision. And then if you fail at that point, all of those efforts that you've spent basically is futile. So this is why this is so important. The variety of payment options, the local options being available, the local language, local currency. Like if you show payments in dollars, if you're trying to sell to the European clients, they're not going to be able to understand and make a payment. They're going to say, what is this? How much am I paying? This is US dollars. Maybe I have to think about it again. So if you make people think at that point in time, they're going to back off from their decision and they're going to probably not pay. You don't want to also pop surprises, meaning you don't want to have any price changes. That's like bait and switch. You want to make sure that everything is consistent. If you told them that the price is 5, you want to make sure that the price continues as 5. It doesn't change throughout the whole process. You don't want to add some tax onto it because that tax that you add onto it is going to create some confusion. Finally, you have the trust factor. You want to make sure that people can trust the page. So the design of the page where you collect payments needs to be trustworthy. Needs to have a clean UI that communicates trust, not too playful, not too gamified, and so on. Okay, let's see what else we have. This is one sample checkout page we had designed. It basically shows a diversity of payment options, and then it shows the different price points that the person can buy. And then it also indicates the savings that they can get if they purchase more. Let's say you can give them more credits. So let's say if the user spends $99, they get 20,000 credits, and you're giving them basically 50% more. And you indicate the fact that you're giving them a super item for spending that much money with you. So again, we can repeat the same kind of ideas in the previous step that I discussed. You can bundle different things together, and you can play with your pricing and add extra benefits and so on during the checkout process as well. That's about it. So basically, Paymentwall, we're a payments company, and we have offices in these locations, and we have all the payment options that I indicated. So if you have any questions, you can let us know. Our team is here also. Tane, if you have any questions about business development and so on, you can approach them. Now, maybe you can ask me questions, and I can try to answer them. Any questions?
Questions? Oh, there's got to be some here. No questions. So clear that you're just like, I'm all set. This is great.
No, there's one question.
Hi. So you're talking about a lot of different payment solutions, but for a mobile game on iOS, for example, which is a very closed garden, the only possible way to purchase, correct me if I'm wrong, is to purchase via Apple, which means using your credit card. So how does that connect with alternative payment models, for example?
So I think it's in the hands of the developers to connect them. I think Apple has blocked alternative payment options, and they only serve credit cards and their own gift card as the two options. So maybe if enough people make noise, maybe Apple might change their mind and provide alternative solutions, either integrated into their platform or allow the developers to add their own options, especially in countries where credit cards are not the main method of payment. But there's some rules that you can use that allows you to go around the walled garden of Apple. If you have a virtual currency that's universal across multiple platforms, so if you can, let's say, pay with iTunes or with App Store and then put money into it, if you can also pay with Google Play, and also if you can allow the users to pay from your own website, and if it's all a unified virtual currency, I believe Apple is okay with that. But then you have to have multiple channels of entry, and you have to have one unified virtual currency to be able to do that. On Google Play side, it's much easier. Well, not Google Play, I apologize. It's Android. So on Android, there's a lot of marketplaces. It's not just Google Play. So if you publish your game on Amazon, you actually are allowed to use alternative payment options. So that could be another solution. And there's a lot of these local marketplaces popping up. Like Samsung has one, and different countries have some that are promoted by various carriers and so on. So there's a lot of options. Maybe a point to take away from this is developers should think about multiple channels to publish their games.
You were talking about the difference between women and men.
Yes.
Can you give us an example how you make the pages for men or for women?
Good question. So I wouldn't suggest changing the pages based on whether they're meant for women or men, but if you have an audience on your game that's more female, then you can maybe appeal to them and so on, and think about their behavior before you design the virtual goods and the promotions. So for example, the example I gave with Godiva, you can take that and you can apply it to your game. Let's say you have a bunch of items in the game that are too expensive. You can have one item that's a little cheaper, but that still communicates luxury. And if you can create that emotional reaction with the user, then you can get them to buy that, and you'll make some money. You won't make the $10 that you're expecting, but at least you can make $2.50 from that chocolate piece you sell them. So it's more about in-game stuff.
There's a lot of payment companies out there. Can you give a quick overview of the market? Like what kind of companies are there, and where is Paymentwall different from the competitors?
Competitors? Okay. So should I list my competitors, or should I list the different companies out there? Okay. So if you look at the marketplace right now, you have obviously the platforms. The platforms are not really payment providers, but by default, they've integrated payment options. So iTunes App Store is one, Google Play is one, and then Facebook credits used to be one, but I think it's not as powerful as it used to be now that Facebook has shifted to the mobile space. So these are the platforms. They come with distribution, a really high 30% or so fee structure, and then they have some payment options that they have integrated themselves. So they work with companies like us, and they provide these options. Now, apart from this, you have the traditional companies that sell credit card solutions. So these are typically banks or processors. That's one big chunk of ecosystem. Then you have the mobile companies, the mobile payment companies. This is a big ecosystem also. It comes from the telecom industry. So, and sometimes it borderlines IVR, like interactive voice response-based payments, or these 0900 numbers, and so on. So that's the second big chunk, or the third big chunk. The fourth big chunk would be more alternative options that have emerged in different countries. Like, if you look at how payment options propagate, most of the payment options have to piggyback on a network. So if you look at PayPal, they started off with the eBay network, and then they became a little bit more independent, and then they provided services to these marketplaces and so on. That's how they grew. But the same thing happened in different countries. If you look at China, China had Alibaba, which is the marketplace in China. So Alibaba created Alipay, their payment option, and they have 500 million users. It's much bigger than PayPal. So if you look at different countries around the world, in China you have Alipay, in Brazil you have Mercado Pago or PagSeguro. If you go to Russia, you have these kiosk networks and so on. So all of these countries produce their own payment methods similar to PayPal. So that would be the big other chunk. And having these integrated onto the platform is one big duty and task. So that's another service. The last one is prepaid cards or other alternative options. So prepaid cards, I don't exactly know how they emerged because they emerged in different ways, but that's a whole different method. And there's a bunch of other options like that that are very alternative. So what happens is if you look at the marketplace now, you have companies that are trying to integrate a few of these methods together, and they're trying to create bundles for people to use. And that's what we do. We have integrated all of these together, and that's what we service. We have about 2 or so competitors that do the same. And they're actually located here in Amsterdam. So we also opened an office here in Amsterdam. So where do we stand against them? Well, we only focus on digital goods. So Paymentwall is only digital goods focused. Other companies also focus on e-commerce. We believe that there's a difference in behavior when people pay and buy digital goods. So I think you have to have a really good fraud technology. You also have to have a really good engine that's dedicated to digital goods that processes things faster than e-commerce, because people want instant gratification when they're trying to buy something. Whereas e-commerce, the payment happens then, but the product is delivered a long time after the purchase process. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Nice.
Any other questions?
I think we're out of time. Thank you, Honor.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.